Welcome to Rewired Sober, the podcast that breaks down the real reasons women turn to alcohol. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a character flaw. It was your neurobiology, your conditioning, and the systems that taught women to silence themselves instead of support themselves. I'm your host, Kate Vitella. I've been a registered nurse for well over 2 decades, trained in addiction and mental health, a bit neuroscience obsessed, but spiritually grounded. This is the science and soul work of a woman's recovery, where I help you understand what's happening in your sober brain and reconnect to that deeper inner truth you've always had, that soul level knowing, the intuition the patriarchy has tried to train out of you. When women combine the science of the brain rewiring with that inner knowing, you stop feeling broken and you start feeling powerful. So let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Rewired Sober. Today's conversation is for anyone who's ever tried to get help or reach out to spaces and thought, why does it feel like I'm failing at recovery itself, or I'm not fitting the mold? And my guest today is the host of the Recovery Rebellion podcast. Like, that says enough right there, right? So excited. And she describes herself as a 12-step Dogma survivor, not anti-healing, not anti-support, but deeply pro-agency and pro-nuance and pro people getting to choose what actually works for them. And so we'll be talking a bit about harm reduction, but mostly about having agency over dogma and rigidity in recovery spaces, and why shame-based models tend to backfire. So I want this to be a conversation about evolution in recovery culture. I mean, we're not rebelling just for rebellion's sake, although sometimes I do. But I am welcoming my guest, Tara Grace. Her Instagram is Burn the Stigma, and she's the host, like I said, of the Recovery Rebellion podcast. I first came across your work through a funny meme, and it was one of those marked safe from the storm type memes, but it was marked safe from my disease doing push-ups in the parking lot. Oh my God, I about fell out of my chair. Like, that's like a 12-step, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
But that language, oh my God. Like, welcome, Tara. Let's just get started. Welcome to the pod. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I always enjoy the opportunity to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. I am so curious. Like, I want to hear all the things. I've listened to a couple episodes of your podcast, and your Instagram, I love this. You describe yourself as a 12-step dropout and former big book bully. Please unpack that for me.
So when I was in the rooms, I always talk about 12-step and AA kind of being on a spectrum, right? You can go to meetings and literally just go to meetings, right? The only time you hear the literature is when they read the preamble in the beginning, but there's not like a whole lot of book work, right? When I was in the rooms, I was all about that first 164 pages. Like, I lived, eat, breathed that book and thought that was my guide to living. That was everything that I needed to know about recovery was in that text. So I was all about it. And with that came some bullying, honestly. Like, for example, there would be women who would ask me to sponsor them, but I would find out that they were on Suboxone, and I'd be like, well, here's my number. Call me when you get serious about the whole recovery thing. And then we'll go through the steps and we'll go through the book, because my mind, and this is because this is what I was taught, right? I didn't pull this out of my ass. Like, this is what I was taught from my sponsors, was if people are on Suboxone or on methadone, then they're blocked. They can't have that spiritual experience. So I wasn't doing it to be an asshole. I was doing it because I really wanted to save their life, right?
Yeah.
But the whole problem with all of it, well, there's a whole lot of it, but with my personal issue was that I was truly faking it, just hoping to make it. Like, I was saying all the things. I would raise my hand, do shares where people would come up to me after me, like, oh my God, that was such a great share, like all that stuff. I could quote the book. I could take you through the book. I could tell you all the things. But inside, I was like, I am dying inside. I am not feeling any of this shit that they say I'm supposed to be feeling. None of these promises are coming true. Like, I am drowning. And when I would talk to my sponsor, what my sponsor say? Go to more meetings. Go to more meetings, right? It's like more of the, like my friend Kirsten said, like more of the medicine that's not working. The medicine that you're taking that's not working, let's give you more of it, right? So it's more meetings. And then it became, when I started to become this revolving door in and out of treatment. And every single time I would come back, I would take on more commitments, do more things, because it was always like help another addict, get outside of yourself. So anytime I would have issues, I would just try to do some service work of some sort. But the problem is that I was never dealing with any of my issues. When I would go home and put my head at the pillow, all of the shit that was bothering me was still bothering me. So, it became, my relationship to 12-step was super, super toxic. It was one of those things that even years after I left, I was still recommending it to people because I thought it will work for them. It didn't work for me because something's wrong with me, but it will definitely work for them. And yeah, that's kind of where that comes from.
I get that, though, because I've said this on my podcast and many, many other podcasts that AA saved my life. And I can't go back from that. And I don't want to, in the sense that the community of other people in recovery, feeling safe and hearing other people say, yes, me too, same, that saved my life in sobriety, whereas I didn't know a single human that struggled with alcohol like I did. I didn't have a family member. I didn't have a friend. I didn't know anybody. This was pre-recovery out loud. This was pre-pandemic, before Instagram blew up with all these recovery spaces. It, to me, felt like there was literally nowhere else to go except for those rooms. Now, I caveat with that with saying, at about 2 years in, I hit a wall. I did not go back to drinking. I don't really use the word relapse hardly ever because I don't like it, but I didn't go back to alcohol. However, I hit this wall where I was feeling like, if I have to read from this same book one more time and go into these echo chambers and recite the same bullshit, and like, I'm not growing, I'm not feeling spiritually fulfilled. And all I was being met with was, well, that's your disease talking. Like, I was being pathologized, like I was in denial and shut down. Now, thank God, speaking of shut down, thank God the pandemic happened in the sense that it forced me to get online. And that's when I realized, oh, there's so many other options out there. And I look back now and I think, gosh, if I was out drinking and I would have known that all these recovery spaces were available online, all these voices, all these podcasts, all these women talking about this stuff, it would have been a game changer back then, but it didn't exist. And so when it comes to your specific experience in 12-step, that sounds like really traumatic. Like, it sounds like you really had a hard time through that. How are you navigating when people say, well, you just had a bad sponsor or a bad 12-step group, or you had a bad experience, but that's not everybody's? I mean, I'm sure you just get like the most fucking ridiculous amount of shit on the internet for this.
So it's actually,
you're just laughing and I'm like, bring it.
I made this bingo board a few years ago on TikTok because it's like, there's about, I don't know, maybe 12 standard stepper comments, right? And some of them are like what you say, well, you should have gone to different meetings, you didn't fully surrender, you must not have read the book, you must, all of the things that are always my fault, right? Because it's never the fault of the program, because it is a perfect program for imperfect people, right? So here's the thing for me is that sometimes does it piss me off and does it trigger me, and then do I go back and forth? And sometimes it's just fun. Sometimes it's just fun to go back and forth with people. Like, I'm a little toxic, sometimes I enjoy it a little back and forth. But most of the time, I'm just being honest. But for the most part, I can relate Because if I was in the book, right, if I was thinking that this program is saving my life, and I heard someone saying the things that I'm saying, I would be, this girl's sick. She's sick and suffering. Sick. She's dangerous. We need to get her the hell off the internet. So as annoying as some of these people are, they're saying it not because they're assholes. They're saying it because they truly think that I am dangerous. Yes. So that is like the one thing that kind of helps, is that it's funny because back in AA we'd always be like, oh, like some are sicker than others. But for me, I'm just like, some are more brainwashed than others. You know, it's not their fault that they think this is the end all be all, that program is the only thing out there. Because how many times do we hear AA saved millions, this is the way to do it, all of the things. So it's just that's kind of how I try to keep it to where it doesn't affect me. And the other thing that helps is knowing that the truth is on my side, right? Like that really helps me on the days that I'm just getting comments after comments after comment. It's like, well, I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm like, I'm right. So, you know, I've read the outside literature. I've looked at things. Am I super well researched and well written? No. But over time, I've read so many things that confirm what I was feeling. And the fact of the matter is, majority of people do not find recovery in those spaces. Majority of people find recovery without that program. So actually on the internet, I don't feel alone at all, because tons of people are always giving, whether some people are afraid to even comment, right? And they'll just send me a message. And sometimes the messages are overwhelming because so many people have gone through this. So many people are still in those rooms. I've had a couple of people make whole new accounts to message me because they're so scared somehow someone in their home group is going to find out that they've sent me a message, right?
Yeah.
So I know that people need to hear it. People need to hear that they're not alone. People need to know that it's not their disease. Because how many people sit there and they're like, I don't really know if this is it. But then what is the messaging you get? That's your disease talking. That's your disease. It wants you dead. So yeah, of course it wants you to stop coming here. It wants you to stop working on your recovery, because to leave AA, to leave 12-step spaces is to die. That is the message that you get in there.
You will die if you leave these rooms. Yeah. And my husband said it perfect. He said it's the only group where if you're not with them, you're against them. And that's the part that feels kind of like prickly and weird, is that I don't find a lot of my 12-step friends are open to hearing about other methods of recovery, and or that it's even possible. They don't want to learn much about neuroplasticity or neuroscience. They don't want to learn about harm reduction. It's weird. It's a weird thing to me. But I do understand. I have really well-meaning 12-step friends that legitimately are worried that I'm going to hell in a really ugly handbasket, that it's my disease running the show.
Quick pause here, folks, because some of you might be listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm on a sober journey, but I still feel stuck. Yeah, that's normal. Removing the alcohol is one thing. Rewiring the brain, rebuilding your actual life is the real work. And that's why I created the Rewired Sober coaching program. It's 3 months where we combine neuroscience, soul work with weekly live support calls so you can actually understand what's happening in your head and your body. You can start anytime. You get immediate access, and you don't have to figure this all out alone. If you're ready for transformation, the link to join is in the show notes, and I hope to see you there. Now back to the show.
And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, well, that's your ego talking. And as a woman, I am at the place where I am now telling clients, fuck that. Fuck that. Maybe you need to listen to yourself a little bit more. Maybe it's time you lean in to what your soul voice is saying. Because here's the thing. If your gut intuition tells you it's wrong, it's fucking wrong. It doesn't have to be right to all the people all the time. You don't have to prove it scientifically. And as women, we're never taught to trust ourselves. We're never taught to trust our intuition. And that's a whole nother subject I could go down. But that's another area where I feel like my spidey sense just goes up. It's like you don't know, you can't be trusted, you're diseased, you'll always be diseased, you leave the room, you'll die. And I'm like, what in the actual 1930s fuck is this? Right? And how many times do I have to read the exact same book? Like, I drank the Kool-Aid, okay? Like, is there another flavor? I mean, and I'm trying to name what actually heals people is sharing struggles, is being honest, feeling safe, time in recovery. Dogma heals no one. Right. You know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but how did you get here? Like, one day were you like, fuck it, I'm just going to start this Instagram and go for it? Or was this like a slow burn? No pun intended.
Slow burn. So I had been out of the rooms for a while, and I gave up on recovery. I was like, I'm just done. And I'm a cannabis smoker. There was a time it was harm reduction for me. There was a time it was a tool in my recovery, but I've recovered. I've moved on. Like there's nothing. It's funny because it feels still so uncomfortable to feel confident in the fact that I'm healed in what made me use substances chaotically. But I know that there's no little disease in my closet waiting for me to have this weak moment to come get me, right? And for a long time, I felt I had to justify it as this and that. But anyways, my journey started as somebody who, like, as a cannabis in recovery advocate, and being somebody who smoked weed, but very much considered themselves. Well, I didn't consider myself in recovery. It was just that I smoke weed. I'm a girl with a past. Like IV heroin was my thing, and it was just I was just like a chick with a past who smoked some weed, right? And then there was the cannabis community that was like, no, like that's recovery. And then I kind of embraced that. I'm like, yeah, like this is recovery. And that is when I started to meet other people in the recovery world who weren't 12-step, which I didn't know existed. I thought that recovery... We don't
know. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I
thought that recovery equaled 12-step. So then I started to, people recommended different books and different things. And then I was like, holy shit. I'm not just this one person. I knew there would be some of us. Like, I thought we were a small group of people who just didn't do it that way, didn't do it the 12-step way. But I thought majority of people did. I thought that was the way of recovery. And even early on, I'm sure there's some very old Instagrams of me still calling it a disease and all that stuff. And I just started sharing that way. And then I really deprogrammed out loud as I started to learn more things. What I learned, I communicated, because I was like, holy shit, other people need to know this too. And that's basically how it evolved. And now it's funny because I don't really partake in cannabis on the internet the way that I used to in the beginning. It was like a big part of like my content. But now it's really just about deprogramming and just the harm, because it's not just that for a while it was AA works for some people, right? And it doesn't work for others. And that was kind of my thing. But then it's like, okay, AA, if you do the 12 steps and that is your recovery 100%, like I believe in autonomy, do what works for you, right?
Yeah.
However, I still think that the program is extremely harmful. I think that it's a faith-based program that has literally, there's a book that I have, it's called like US of AA, how AA hijacked the science of alcoholism. And it's just, it has hijacked, like you have doctors, you have literal medical doctors spitting straight dogma out of their mouth. Like it has hijacked the reality. That's why people think it's a forever disease and all of those things. So yeah, that's basically it. As I learned as I went, and I was like, holy shit, people need to know this.
Yeah. Deprogramming out loud. That's an interesting way to put it. And yeah, I would strongly argue if your drug of choice was IV heroin use and you are now using cannabis, that's called harm reduction. And that's an amazing recovery journey. And I'm one of those recovery coaches where it's like, it's not my recovery. So I'm not there to tell you how to do it. whatever fucking works. We come to recovery from the intersection of various backgrounds and traumas and issues in life. Like, the minute someone tells you there's only one way to do something, run as fast as you can in the opposite direction, because that's where shit gets dangerous. I wasn't as vocal in deprogramming. I would slowly be chipping away at the disease model, slowly be chipping away at some of the stigma and dogma, but I didn't outright actually say much about it until recently. And I think maybe it's because sort of geopolitically, it feels like one more thing that I have to like suppress and shut up about. And I'm like, nah, fuck that. I'm just going to say whatever I want. Like, I'm over it. But why do you think some people feel threatened by the fact that there's more than one way to recover? Or that they feel so threatened that they need to slide into your DMs and tell you you're going to die?
I think it's because we're literally talking about two completely different belief systems, right? Like, they 100% believe what I am saying is going to get somebody killed. They 100% believe that with all of their might. Like the ones who really are vocal towards me, I know that's what they believe. So, I mean, that's just what it is. It's just a clash of beliefs, of hardcore internal beliefs, because I believe with my heart and soul that program's killing people and that dogma's killing. So we have opposite sides. I think they're killing people. They think I'm killing people. So.
Yeah. Well, so speaking, this is a podcast about murder. What do you think is harmful about that? When you say you think you don't really think they're killing people, but like, what's the harm that comes to mind from those rooms or that messaging?
The whole idea, and you touched on it, trusting yourself. The whole idea that my thinking is broken. The whole idea that I can't trust myself. That whole idea of first thought wrong, like all of this stuff, that if you can't trust yourself, who the fuck can you trust? If you literally cannot trust your own thoughts, your own thinking, all of that stuff. And so it teaches you not to trust yourself. And I mean, there's people coming in from all walks of life in those rooms, people with hardcore trauma, people like, for me, I originally got into drugs, I believe, because of my low self-esteem, and drugs made me feel good, and I was more social, and I was more fun to be around, and it was something that I was finally good at, That's how it started in the beginning. And so to tell someone who has already super low self-esteem that every thought that they've ever thought is wrong, that is just one tiny piece of what it's so harmful. You're a nurse. If you went to get seen for something and they told you that you have EKG that's like off the charts or something crazy, and they say you just need to pray about it, you would be like, what the hell is that? But for some reason, the mainstream treatment in America at the end of the day is pray about it. That is really what it's all about. So I mean, aside from it being a faith-based religion, people say, oh, it's spiritual, not religious, as if that makes it any better. But still, if you had a spiritual doctor, would that make you feel any better for treating anything that you had? If he's like, oh, I'm not a religious doctor, I'm a spiritual doctor, it wouldn't make it any better for you, right? Yeah. So, I mean, those are just like kind of just the fundamental basics. I mean, if you add in the actual fellowship, if you add in all of those things, if you add in the 13 stuff, I mean, there's so much. There is, like I said, I mean, there's just not enough time.
I get that. And I've said that before too, like going back to trusting yourself. I am not talking about when you were in active addiction and you're ripped out of your head on drugs and alcohol, you should, go trust yourself to get in a car. None of that reckless stuff. But as we go into recovery, we start to listen to our own intuition. We start to listen to our own sort of gut sense. And yes, in those rooms, the messaging is absolutely, you cannot be trusted. And I find that to be really damaging for people who never got to trust themselves to begin with. What would you say to someone who is sober curious, but they're terrified of these rigid recovery spaces?
I'm never going to tell someone not to go. right? Like, I'm never going to tell someone not to go because maybe they need a faith-based path. Maybe that's what they need. I think the good thing about talking about the negatives is that people can go in knowing they've heard something other than, hey, saved millions, it works if you work it, right?
Yeah.
If they at least, it's what's it called, like informed consent, right? Like, I'm not saying don't go, but if you go, just be aware of X, Y, and Z. Like, it's not this perfect program, right? Nothing's perfect. And there's literally not one treatment for anything in the world that works for absolutely everybody. Why the hell would something as complex as substance use disorder be the one thing? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But I think that people should be not terrified, but they should be aware. Be aware, you know, if you like what you hear, if the literature resonates, if the program resonates with you, go for it. Just be aware if it starts to feel a little too culty for you, if it starts to feel like it's harming you more than helping you, there's nothing wrong with leaving because there's a million other ways to do this shit.
Yeah, for sure. I personally didn't start feeling that way until, like I said, a couple years in. And that's when I realized, like, oh, there is other recovery modalities out there that allows me to explore all aspects of recovery and not just this same. What's with reading the same? I keep going back to this. What's with reading the same book? That is the weirdest thing to me I've ever. Can you imagine going to college and they're like, you're going to study science or fucking basket weaving, and they're like, but you get this one book.
One book.
Written 1931 or whenever. I mean, I see people carrying around their big book, and they're called big book thumpers for a reason. What do you think is with that one fucking book? I don't get it.
It's the guide to living, don't you know? I remember feeling so proud of my highlighted book and my pages falling out. I'd be like, oh, excuse me, let me put my book back together, right? Because I've read this thing so many times. I'm so spiritual. Part of that, in my opinion, is the indoctrination. Keep hearing the same shit over and over and over and over again. I mean, the fact that they don't recommend outside literature, like don't read outside literature because that's going to confuse you, you know, stick to the message. The message is right here. I mean, to me, it's just part of the brainwashing. It's part of the brainwashing and it's part of the indoctrination process to keep hearing it over and over and over again. And I remember I would lie. I'd be like, oh, I hear something new every time I read it. Like, no, I didn't. But I would say that.
I'm dying. I feel like this is heresy. Like, we're going to be witches that are burned for having this conversation. All the more reason to keep having it, right? It feels so off limits to say this stuff. And that's how indoctrinated I am, is that I try to be really democratic about the whole AA thing. Like, it saves people's lives. Go if it helps you. And I am still, look, go to anything if it helps you. Freaking buy a hula hoop, drink pickle juice, burn incense. I don't care what you do, right? To do anything. Like Holly Whitaker says, throw the kitchen sink at it. Recovery cannot be one size fits all. Right. But yeah, it feels like we're going to be burned for having this conversation. When you talked about being in the rooms and feeling like you could recite the whole big book, you had all the perfect things to say. I want you to go back to that feeling of, like, you said you felt really broken inside. Like, what do you think was going on there?
So this is my view on substance use disorder.
Yeah.
I feel that substance use disorder is not a primary thing. I feel like it is a secondary thing. It is a symptom of something else, especially those of us who stumble over and over and over again. So what was going on with me was that I'm doing what they're telling me to do. They tell me if I work these steps, if I work this book, if I do these things, that I'm going to be okay. But the last thing I feel is fucking okay. But they keep telling me to keep doing it, and I keep doing it. And yet the first few times, no, I didn't want to get sober. It was my parents that kept putting me in treatment, right?
Yeah.
But then towards the end, of course I wanted to. I was sick of it. And I kept trying the same shit over and over and over again. And I wasn't feeling any of this thing. So it was like, is it eventually going to click? Am I doing it wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong? Because apparently I'm doing something wrong, because there's nothing wrong with this program. There's nothing wrong with these steps, right? Because it works if you work it. How can I be working it and it's not working?
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, what is wrong with me? And I'm like, am I one of those unfortunates they talk about? You know, am I constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself?
You're
like, what is going on?
You are incapable of being honest with so you finally said, fuck this isn't working. It's the definition of insanity, doing this same bullshit. Which, okay, before I go to my next question, the other thing I notice is that people who are strictly 12-step only know how to work the steps when they have a problem in their lives. They rework the steps over and over and over. And I find a lot of them to be struggling with their mental health quite a bit, because love the steps for what they are, but they're not going to heal you from all the damn things. And so I have friends that have worked the steps like 400 times, and that's all they know to do when they come across a problem. Yeah. And it makes me nervous for them, because I worry about mental health of people who only know how to do a moral fucking inventory, who only know how to speak in that language. And so, yeah, talk about no outside literature, no outside conversations of any type, right? And so what actually helped you heal? What helped you, like, quote, burn the stigma?
I feel like what finally stopped the madness was to give up on what I thought it had to look like. When I finally said, it's not going to be like this for you. This is just not your path, sweetheart. Like, if it was going to be your path, it would have been your path. We're not here. And to just be like, I'm probably going to die, because that's what they told me. But I know I'm going to die if I stay here. So I'm going to try something different. And I think one of the other things that was big for me, when my husband, we had gotten arrested in 2008, and I did 1.5 years, but he did 9.5 years, but he was my boyfriend at the time. But when he got out, we were together, and we started using a little bit, trying to use around his PO test, like, when he would have to pee for his PO officer and all that stuff. And so when he got positive UAs, and his PO said, if you get one more, you're going back. So normally for us, that would have been like, all right, we're just going to go rip and run until we get caught. And we were like, let's try this normal shit, right? Like, let's just try to be fucking normal. and we made that decision, and we did it. And there was no disease that had taken over that made that impossible. We literally were able to make that decision, and that was 8 years ago. So it was just one of those things. I was like, okay, what you believe is fucking powerful. It's so powerful. And I feel like for me, it still took a few years to like actually start deprogramming and reading outside stuff.
Yeah, I have an episode I recorded on questioning the disease model. And one of the things I present is, how do you explain the people that sort of recover naturally? They just one day decide they're not going to do the thing anymore. I mean, if you say we all have a chronic relapsing brain disease, how do you explain that? And I know people who've sort of made that decision and flipped a switch, and I'm sure you did other things to facilitate recovery and to move forward. One of the biggest things is just speaking out loud about it, saying it out loud, sharing your truth, ripping the Band-Aid off. I imagine that's really healing, not to sound like super cheesy.
No, it is. What solidified it for me was reading stuff like the natural recovery rate, and how majority of people who, you know, started at an early age like I did, they do usually mature out of it by 35.
They age out.
Yeah. And it's like, we never hear that. And that's what drives me crazy about the treatment industry, is that because majority of people who are in treatment are like, 18 to 25, right? Their parents are panicking. That was my family. So they're really playing on these parents' fear that my baby's gonna die, right? And it just starts this cycle of putting these people who, especially someone at 18, 19, we tell people they have this permanent disease, it's progressive, it's cunning, it's baffling, it's powerful. And to tell someone who's 18 years old, 19 years old, those things, to program their mind to believe those things, you know what that does? That keeps them coming in and out of treatment and keeps the money flowing. And the crazy thing is that like the natural recover, and the like when people age out of it, I think is around like 34, 35. And that is when people in treatment like that goes down. So it's like you're basically just having people go through this time in and out of these places. It's not because they're like, oh, on my 20th time, I finally got it. In my opinion, no, you finally aged out of it. It had nothing to do with you finally surrendered. You finally did this. You were just finally done. But then they contributed all to, you know, I was just such a hard head. I just couldn't get it the first time, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole, my opinion is there's this whole story, this whole romantical story and folklore of the addict and, you know, the alcoholic and all of these things that it's just, that factually is not a true thing, you know. Yeah, but a lot of us, we look that part. Like when I looked the part. Right? But what was actually going on wasn't what I thought was going on.
Yeah, I love they use the word folklore because I use that too when it comes to a lot of the stuff that we claim to be the gospel is folklore, and it's not scientifically proven. And I also understand what you're talking about in terms of the business of recovery.
Yes.
Much like the prison industrial complex.
Yes.
You know, I work as a psychiatric nurse. It's heads in the beds, dude. We got to make money. Right? Yeah. We know there's a high recidivism rate. We got to make money, and we need heads in the beds. So it's a business at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And most recovery facilities have adopted a 12-step model. Medical doctors have adopted this as the gold standard because we don't spend much time researching anything else. And it's the longest, oldest game in town. And so it's easier for doctors to say, go to AA than for them to deal with it. And it perpetuates the disease model that we have a chronic relapsing brain disease, and it perpetuates that whole story. It also perpetuates big alcohol in their advertising in saying most people can drink normally, but if you have a chronic relapsing brain disease, you should avoid alcohol.
Really, when you think about how in 2026 there are still doctors, medical doctors recommending this faith-based program, like this pray it away program, when we know so much more than when that book came out. We know so much more in every other area of psychiatry, of just health, like the human body, whatever you want to call it, going to the doctor shit, and every part of you. We know so much more. Yeah. But for some reason, we're using this thing that was, it was outdated when it came out, you know? Like, it's just crazy.
And neuroplasticity didn't even really start getting airtime until the 50s, and then 60s, 70s, 80s. We're still studying neuroplasticity, but we are for certain in that the brain changes all throughout life. It does not stay the same. It's physiologically impossible for your brain to stay exactly the same. It just is. Our brains aren't built that way. And so anyway, you have a platform, you have a podcast, you have a decent Instagram following, and you're helping improve the language around inclusivity and kind of relax, chill the fuck out a little bit. What do you feel like you're saying that's helping people?
I think that you're not broken, that you can heal, that if the program didn't work for you, it's not a you thing. I feel like as I evolve, my message evolves too, because I'm learning new things. I'm learning new information. And in the beginning, it was just to really rebel against the dogma that's in there. That was a really, really important step for me. And it comes up a lot still. But I'm trying to move away from just focusing on 12 steps so much, because that's not my main message. What I really want people to hear is how fucked up the treatment industry is. I've spent so much time, like my whole 20s went to that industry. My parents' life savings went to that industry. My parents are in their 70s, still both working full time because their retirement went to trying to get me well. And there's so much harm that people don't realize is harm, because people hear it works if you work it. If you want it bad enough, you will get there. You just have to do the work. You have to be willing. And when parents hear that, they're like, why aren't you willing? Why, when family members, spouses, whoever, sisters, why aren't you willing to do the work? They say these steps are laid out here. Like, why can't you do the work? So just letting family members know that if it's not working for them, it's not them. It's not a them thing. I think the biggest thing for people has been just hearing that they're not broken.
Yeah, yep. Recovery should feel like expansion, not a contraction. We were previously talking about it perpetuates people's limiting belief that they are forever broken.
Yes.
And that I'm really passionate about that as well. I believe very, very strongly our thoughts create our reality. From a medical standpoint, if you don't believe that, how do you explain, placebo medications? When you believe something will work in your body and you're taking a sugar pill, for many people it works. So when we're telling ourselves, I have a diseased brain, I'll forever be broken, I'll forever be chronically relapsing, I believe that's dangerous to people.
It is dangerous, and we know it's dangerous. It's so funny because they'll always talk about, you always hear AA saves millions, and it's like, I want to know how many statistically that dogma and that mindset, how many people has that taken them to the grave? Like, no, AA didn't put the drink or the needle or whatever up to the person, right? But when we're talking about belief systems, how many people thought that they were permanently broken and just gave up? That dogma is so powerful. I've talked to so many people who just felt so stuck. They were kept trying to figure out, like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why can't I get this shit to work?
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the work you're doing in the sense that it's just expanding the conversation. We're healing over identity labels, and we're finding ways to recover where we get to be honest and where we get to listen to our intuition. And I think for people who are just really needing that sense of honesty, that sense of safety, do you think the future of recovery is going to be more personalized rather than program-based?
I do. I think as long as the treatment industry exists, there is always going to be a push for the 12-step dogma because it's cheap, right? It's really cheap. It's easy to have a staff full of people who their only qualifications are that they've worked the steps. There are so many non-medical, like the first rehab that I went to was basically just a 12-step retreat, but my parents thought it was like a legit rehab, but every single person that worked there had only worked the steps. There was no clinicians, there was nothing. And there's so many places that exist that maybe have one doctor, one nurse, but your caseload, like the counselor that you're working with, is just another person who worked the program.
Who worked AA?
Yeah. It's pretty messed up. There's a movie called The Business of Recovery. It's a documentary. It's like 10 years old, but you should definitely give it a watch because it really just shows how embedded 12-step is into the treatment industry.
Absolutely. It's a moneymaker like anything else, like the prison industrial complex, the recovery treatment industrial complex. It's all kind of in the same wheelhouse. I mean, I hate to say it, but I've been working in this field long enough to know that, like, it's a business. And so we do what's cheap. We do what is uncontested. And there's a lot of political reasons. There's pharmaceutical companies lobbying, and there's a political agenda, and there's capitalism. I mean, it's a lot more than just what will truly help people.
Yeah. But I will say that I do see a shift to where people are offering a little bit more. There's still a whole lot to be desired, but I think, and I hope that more people are going to find recovery without formal treatment, because honestly, I know people always think of more treatment, more beds as a good thing, but in the end, like you said, it is a business. And if the treatment is filling your head that you can't trust yourself and that you have a forever disease, is more treatment necessarily a good thing?
Yeah. And is scaring the shit out of people or coercion, is that the way to get people to recover? It's not. I mean,
no.
I feel like some of those programs scare the shit out of people and make them call themselves an alcoholic forever. And that actually turns people away. Well, thank you so much for coming on to talk about this. I know that there's a lot more around this conversation we can have. And I might even have you back to talk about specifics of harm reduction, because I'm interested in that as well from a psychiatric and nervous system perspective. But where can people find you if they are laughing along with us and maybe just curious about what else you have to say?
Sure. So if you go to burnthestigma.com, I believe it brings up all of my links. Also, I have a podcast called The Recovery Rebellion. Pretty much on all socials, you can find me under Burn the Stigma.
Well, thank you very much. I think just telling your truth, being honest. I'm all about some rebellion. So I really appreciate you coming on to chat with me. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you. And we got to get you on the Recovery Rebellion as well.
Oh, look out. Look out. Okay, thank you. Thanks for spending this time with me. I love you all so very much, and I mean it. You can find me on all the socials at Rewired Sober. The links to join my coaching program are always in the show notes, as well as an email if you want to get in touch with the pod. So until next time,